What's going on, everybody? My name's Franco, and today we are hating. Today I'm going to be going over some of the receivers I feel are overrated, overvalued, etc. for this upcoming fantasy season. Now, just because they're on this list doesn't mean I think they're going to be terrible or I think they're going to be a bust. I think it just means that they might not return the value you want based off their ADP or their ranking. So I just maybe would be weary of drafting them where they're currently at. Now, if you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. I'm going to be doing one of these for every position and try to upload at least one video a day till the football season starts. And also, you can yell at me in the comments if you want. I'm sure I'll anger somebody about their favorite player or their late round pick, whatever it may be. But I'm going to start off with somebody people are a little bit higher on, which I don't really buy into it as much based off last year, which is A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown comes in ranked as wide receiver 11 on Fantasy Pros with an ADP around 25. Obviously, as we all know, he was just traded to Philly after a decent year with the Titans, where he was a big part of them being the number one seed, but he missed a couple games with injury. It just wasn't the same explosive self we all knew him to be. Granted, he's probably playing with a better offense now overall. He's with Tennessee, it was just him and Derrick Henry. But now he's got a lot more people who might be taking some targets away from him, whether that be Devontae Smith or Dallas Goedert, or even just the running game. Jalen Hurts is a much more mobile quarterback than Ryan Tannehill. And Tannehill is pretty mobile, but Hurts takes it to another level, and this team likes to run the ball as well. So I'm not entirely sure the same target share will be there for him where he had in Tennessee. Within Tennessee, he had really no competition for targets whatsoever. They were never really able to build a very competent passing attack, while Tannehill a couple of years back did pretty well, and Brown has been a low-end wide receiver one for quite some time now. I just don't really buy it, him being the same level of production he was in Philly as he was in Tennessee. I guarantee they're going to try a lot to utilize him, and definitely will make him, I'd say, like a worst wide receiver 15, but especially at an ADP around 26, I feel like there's definitely some better values you can get around this pick. Like I said, with all these, do I hate this ADP for him? No, not really. I'd understand it. I'd definitely say maybe a little bit closer to 30 to 35, but given everything, the difference between wide receiver 11 and wide receiver 12 or 13, especially, at this level, could honestly make or break your season, so I'd be a little bit careful when drafting him this high. The next one I have on my list is actually something very similar in ranking, which is Deontay Johnson of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Deontay had a much better year in 2021 compared to 2020, and that's not saying that 2020 was bad. He just had a lot less drops, and the targets and the volume and everything was there for him. That's really all it came down to with Deontay Johnson, was just volume, volume, volume. All he did was just get targets and just get everything from Ben that he could offer. Well, Ben's gone, which honestly is obviously better for the Steelers. That dude could not throw a pass to save his life anymore, which what happens when you get up there in age. But with Johnson, I'm not sure how that'll play out. Whether it's Trubisky or Kenny Pickett, I feel like either of those quarterback options are going to be okay for him. I don't think it's going to be a massive upgrade or a massive downgrade in either direction. The only thing I do worry about is his lack of targets, or just the amount of volume he's going to get might decrease just due to the offensive system they run in. A lot of Deontay Johnson passes weren't on the same level of Claypool's in terms of route yards ran per route, and they might try to utilize Najee Harris a little bit more now that they don't have their quarterback situation primarily locked. So I don't know if the volume will be there, and he wasn't the most efficient still compared to how he should be for the amount of targets he was getting. I still think, like I said, similar to A.J. Brown, I still think he'll be in that wide receiver 17, 18 range at the very worst, but especially at an ADP around 40. There's a couple other receivers I see at the same roughly ADP, T. Higgins and Michael Pittman come to mind, who I would like a little bit more than Deontay Johnson here. Like I said, still will be great. Had a lot of, great year last year. I think he might regress back to 2020, which in that case, you're still getting a pretty good value for where you're drafting him, but it could go a little lower. Now, fun fact here, I recorded this video yesterday. I don't know when I'm going to be uploading this. I recorded this Wednesday the 6th, and DJ Moore was this picture. And now they got Baker, so I had to record this whole thing and change everything, and I'm like, who do I replace this with? And honestly, I'm surprised I left him off the list at all. It's Amari Cooper. This might be a little bit premature, and I might have to go fix it up later, but it looks like Deshaun Watson is not playing this season, for good reason, obviously. And honestly, with the way the season's shaping out, I see at best for him is an 8-game or 12-game suspension. And with the Baker Mayfield trade being finalized, that affects both DJ Moore off this list, because obviously with a competent quarterback, DJ Moore gets a lot better. But it moves Amari Cooper a little bit down too, because there was still a slight chance that if Deshaun Watson doesn't play, Baker will save the day and be blah, blah, blah. Well, that's not happening. Now you're most likely getting Jacoby Brissett. So good luck, Amari Cooper owners. I don't see it, the value it there. I mean, he's a wide receiver, number one, on a team kind of similar to A.J. Brown's scenario in Tennessee, where he's clear-cut the wide receiver number one. There really isn't a good number two option behind him. That being said, I just really don't trust the quarterback play to get him the touchdowns and the yardage that he would need. He's going to be a very solid option. He'll have some weeks where he might amaze you, but otherwise he has a pretty safe floor. Around this ADP of 52 is maybe around where I expect, maybe a little bit lower. Obviously, maybe like the 55 to 60 range, maybe a little bit later, but without proper quarterback play, I wouldn't risk going with a selection this high, and there's some other receivers that I would see in the same vein. I would draft a little bit higher. Now this one might ruffle up some feathers, but I just don't trust the Detroit Lions offense to fully produce a competent, fluid offense, mostly with Jared Goff at the helm. Now, Amon-Ra St. Brown was the breakout candidate. Not the breakout candidate. He was the breakout last year. Came out of nowhere. If you played with him in your championship, you probably won it. He had a really great end of the season where he just caught everything that was thrown at him, and he always seemed to be open and get a couple yards after the catch, no matter what happened. Well, I just don't know if I trust it that fully building off of that campaign, solely because of how many playmakers Detroit has now. They've got back from injury TJ Hawkinson. He missed the latter part of the season. They picked up in free agency DJ Chark. That's another big pickup. Josh Reynolds is still there. They drafted Jameson Williams with the 12th pick. They traded up. They gave up a good amount of... Actually, they didn't give them that much draft capital. Regardless, they traded up to 12 to get Jameson Williams. DeAndre Swift is back and healthy. It's a lot of playmakers for a below-average quarterback in Jared Goff. And while he will still... Amon-Ra will still get his targets. He'll still get his share. I don't think he's going to have the same breakout or the same superstar increase that some people are expecting, especially around this ADP. The ranking feels fair at wide receiver 30. I've seen some websites, like I think ESPN had him at wide receiver 20, which is way too high for me, but regardless, I can understand the hype behind him. That being said, this is not a knock on his skill, like I mentioned. It's more so just the amount of talent on the wide receivers, tight ends, running backs doesn't match the amount of talent that's on the quarterback side of the ball, and I just don't really trust that offense to get him the targets that he needs to be worthy of a 60 and below ADP at this range. Now, one more here. This one is pretty popular. I feel like I'm not going out on a limb by saying I don't trust Tyler Lockett one bit this year. And if you notice the trend, it's the quarterback play. We knew Tyler Lockett's ceiling, and we knew his floor over these past couple years. If you think in fantasy football boom or bust, you think of Tyler Lockett. He'll win you 1 week, he'll lose you the next. Well, with Drew Lock, we don't know his ceiling anymore, but we know the floor. The floor is still there. It's still 3 catches, 17 yards. That's fine. Like that's if the ceilings are worth it, especially at an ADP of around 90, the ceilings are worth it. You can take a risk on him and have him be like your flex or something. But with Drew Lock, we really don't know the ceiling whatsoever. So it's a matter of, is it really worth the risk of keeping him around? And maybe even at this ADP, he might be your flex on like a 12-team league. Or is it worth it to take a risk on him here, or maybe go with a younger player on a little more upside, like maybe like a Gabe Davis comes to mind, or even like an older veteran like Adam Thielen or a Hunter Renfrow type player who might be available around this ADP, who you can maybe take a chance on, even some rookies as well. And while they might not have the same ceiling as Tyler Lockett in the sense that Lockett might still get like a couple games where he has 30 points, you already know you're going to get more consistent production out of them, and it's a big risk, that big if factor of if he hits his ceiling and hits it consistently, or else you're just left with someone getting 8 points a week sitting away on your bench. That's too good to drop, but also not good enough to trade away or not good enough to start. So these are some receivers that I don't really buy into the hype as much as other people do. Let me know in the comments, like I said, if you disagree, who you think I missed. I could do a part 2 in the future, but until then, I will see you guys in the next video.